Married Redditors, would you want your spouse to remarry if you passed away? Why or why not? Story 1. I hope she does, and be constantly disappointed how inferior her new lover would be, constantly nagging him like my late husband wouldn't do that. My late husband would have done a better job. Story 2. I lost my dearly loved husband 2 years ago, and have absolutely no desire to marry again. It's very peaceful here with just me and the cat. However, had I passed first, I would very much have wanted him to remarry. God bless him, his arthritis restricted his mobility so much he needed help, but he was such a wonderful, funny, kind companion, he was well worth helping. I would have hated to think he would be alone. Story 3. It totally depends on your age. If young, then yes, of course. We have been married for almost 40 years and are in our mid-60s with 3 grown children. We have discussed this and there is no way and also no reason for either of us to get remarried. Why date, live together, anything but remarry? It is a disaster waiting for your estate and especially for your children to get screwed out of their inheritance. We have seen this happen twice where an older man remarries and his children get nothing when he dies. Both times involve dishonesty and deceit with the living spouse and her family. Story 4. Absolutely. I would not want my husband to spend the rest of his life alone. He's already a bit of a loner and I would hate to think of him having no one to share his life with. Story 5. Yeah, I tell him that I would haunt him mercilessly, but really I see how happy he is with me and I want him to be loved and cared for without me here. But like I also ghost creep if that turns out to be a thing. Story 6. No. If he wants a relationship that's fine, but there is no way I want him to compromise any assets that will go to our children eventually. And he agrees, I will never marry again. Story 7. Yes, I've said to my husband, together 21 years, married 11 many times, that, if I die, he must move on and meet someone else. We've never wanted kids and are now in our early 40s, but I've also always advised that he should never get a vasectomy in case I die. He remarries someone younger, and ends up wanting kids in a different relationship dynamic, but he always says he would just want to be a weird guy living in a van with a dog. Story 8. No, I'd never move on and marry again. I don't see myself committing my life to anyone else. I'd hope he feels that kind of epic love as well, like no one else could ever compare, etc. The question was about remarrying, therefore, my answer is about remarrying. Nobody said he has to be alone forever, however, he would most likely choose to be anyway. Story 9. I know for certain is never marry again if my wife predeceases me. I'm comfortable being alone, I would prefer she never remarry, I just don't want complications of our estate so our children will have a comfortable inheritance. Story 10. I'm weird I would hate for someone else to play house and mommy with my kids, but obviously we can't control what happens after we leave this earth. Story 11. My bigger question is, if you are happily married young and your spouse dies unexpectedly, which is terrible, but then 10 years later you remarry, okay, who do you wind up with after you die, if you believe in that stuff? Story 12. If you wanted to, sure. If I'm dead I'm not exactly going to care. If they died I'd want them to be cool with me remarrying as well if I met a right person down the line. I'm not in the camp of every person has one soulmate. Story 13. If I die right now while my son is still young, 9 years old. No, I would not be okay. My biggest fear is someone mistreating my kid while I am not here on earth. Now if kids are all 18 plus I would be okay for him to move on and get remarried. Story 14. I don't mind if he remarries. He swears he won't, but we have a deal, no step-parents or significant others while our kid is still growing up in our home. We've witnessed step-parents being kids' first abusers and don't want that for our son. Story 15. I've told him he can move on, but he better have some standards and wait until him and the kids are really ready for it. Also, I find it extremely disrespectful to move on quickly. If I die in Jan and he's having ON states in March, it'll haunt his. These conversations are mostly in jest. When we were younger my husband was Army infantry. His first deployment was to Iraq in 2006 and it was bad. Before they go, the Army gave them paperwork to plan their funerals. It was really hard going through all that with him. I remember telling him if he died that was it for me, that I'd never put myself out there again. He'll never forget when he looked at me so serious and said, "No baby. You were meant to be loved. If I don't come back, I expect you to eventually move on and be happy again. You aren't made to be alone, so don't ice yourself off like that. Know that it's what I want." I sobbed. I know it wasn't easy for him to say, but he knew I would need those words if it ever came to pass. Luckily, he made it home both times and got TF out of the military. We've been married 20 years almost now this October, and I still doubt I'd be able to date or remarry, but he'll never forget that conversation. Story 16. Yes, I would want him to be happy, and if that means remarrying, then by all means, go for it. I wouldn't remarry though. Marriage is hard work and I don't have it in me anymore to put that much effort in. Story 17. No, but my spouse already made it clear he would because he isn't raising our kids by himself and expects me to do the same. Guess I will just haunt them. I personally would not though. I plan on having a Golden Girls house if this is the case. Taking applications now. Story 18. My petite very sweet aunt was married to the same man for 40 years. When he died, she said, "I can't believe I stayed with that so long. Oh, this nice little old lady, yes if he wants to, because I love him and want him to be happy." Story 19. My mom has no interest in remarrying, and it's been several years now since dad passed. When my wife's mom passed, her dad remarried less than a year later, said he just couldn't live on his own. It's different for everybody I guess. My wife and I agree that it's not so much that we like being married in general, we just like being married to each other. so it takes somebody pretty special to make either of us consider it again. Otto, I tell her, last time I wanted someone with the same values and goals, since we pretty much hit all those goals. Next time I'll just go for a story 20. Sorry, but there is only one possible answer to this question unless you're a hugely selfish person. You're dead. Of course the people who are still alive deserve to be able to move on. Story 21. Yes, and I've told him that. He said he wouldn't want to. I said I'd haunt him if he didn't. Then he said good, because then he'd get to still be with me. Yes, absolutely. I love my wife, and if I passed I would want her happy again, and with me being dead I can't make that happen. Story 22. It's entirely up to her, but I honestly doubt she would remarry. She's pretty independent as it is, and I don't think she'd be interested in going through the whole dating process again. If she passed away, I probably wouldn't remarry either. I would probably look for a few people who I can spend time with, going out to dinner, watching a film, traveling, etc., but I doubt I'd remarry. I enjoy having time alone. Story 23. I wouldn't necessarily be upset if he remarried, but it depends a lot on the circumstances on if that's what I'd want him to do. If I died now, I'd want him to find happiness again, but our kids would need to come first until they are older. If I die when I'm old, I wouldn't want him to remarry. I don't think I'd remarry if he died, no matter the circumstances. Story 24. I would want her to do whatever makes her happy, and I wouldn't want her to just spend the rest of her life alone and whatnot. I mean, that's no life to live. Story 25. I don't care, he'll be dead. So what does it matter to me if he wanted to get remarried? I'd want him to have whatever life he wants to have and to be happy. Story 26. Of course, I mean only if he found someone who made him happy, not for some social pressure thing or anything, but like, he's my favorite person, I would fight God for him, I want him to have love and companionship, he's incredible and full of kindness, and I would hope somebody else out there saw that and valued him. I wouldn't want him to be alone, so if he didn't want to get married again, I at least hope he'd have close friendships and connections and active social life. Story 27. Yes, to the right person. We have 2 daughters, and I would want my family to find love and become whole again. My husband is a good man and would never let my kids forget who their mom is. Story 28. I have been with my wife since we were kids, celebrating 15 years, and anticipating the birth of our first here in August. I've been so fortunate to receive the love that she gives. She has so much of it that I would hate to deprive the world of her goodness, especially in selfishness after death. I hope that neither one of us have to think about this for many years. However, if it were to happen, her light should continue to shine with whatever and whoever makes her happy. My only act of selfishness is that no other dude is going to be called Dad though. That is reserved for me forever. Our daughter can call him by his name, Guy, or whatever else fits. I'm only just hardly joking. Story 29. I'd want him to, but I know he wouldn't be bothered to try dating again if he died. I don't think I'd have the energy or inclination to try dating either. It's rough out there. Story 30. I've thought about this a lot since I'm riddled with health problems. I would, because I'd want him to be happy. He's such a loving person and easy to fall in love with, so I don't think it would be hard for him to find someone, and I would never want to be a ghost that haunts him and keeps him unhappy for the rest of his life. I'd never want him to forget me, but I wouldn't want it to take over his life. Story 31. Yes, if he finds someone he loves, I would prefer he do that. I wouldn't want him to be depressed the rest of his life, and without someone there to offload all that love he has, I think he might be the type to pull the 40s housewife and try to never remarry, but I think that would be a terrible waste. I also hate the idea of him being sad and alone in general. Love isn't a replaceable thing. Every time you find it, it's entirely new though. Like you can love a series of dogs without diminishing your love for the ones that came before. People love the same way. Each new person is an entirely new section of your heart, and they can cherish those that were lost the same way the widower can. Love is a beautiful thing. I wouldn't want to stop someone, especially someone I love, from experiencing again. I don't think I would remarry though. Story 32. Oh yes, I love him so much, and if I were no longer there for him, I would absolutely want him to have someone to take care of him, be his companion and friend. He's such a wonderful human being, just trying to do the best he can. He absolutely deserves a companion. If I'm dead, what do I even care? Story 33. No, or it depends, because the amount of money I will leave her should go to only my daughters. I have 2 beautiful baby girls, and I don't want them losing the money I worked for, the money my mom RIP worked for, or the money my dad worked for. I would hate for my daughters to not get these securities if something happens to their mom while married before she can set things up. I could just see some man trying to keep it for his kids or family. I have no problem with her dating and being in a relationship, but I would not want her to remarry. Spouse versus children can get sticky with the deceased. Story 34. Yes, because I know for a fact that my wife will be absolutely miserable if I die first, and I would want her to find someone like me or even better. I wouldn't want her to spend the rest of her life alone sad about what she lost. Story 35. I'm fine with her finding someone else. People shouldn't be alone. However, I advised her to work with an advisor to keep her money separate from anyone new. Story 36. I honestly don't think my husband can survive on his own. I told him to find a new wife as soon as he can so he doesn't end up homeless. LOL. When I'm out of town he barely functions and eats McDonald's every meal. Story 37. So my wife 28F passed away from a vehicle collision. It wasn't an instant death, but ultimately, I decided to remove her off life support as the quality of life was never going to exist. After many rounds of therapy, I was ready to move on. I'm only dating and taking it slow. my recommendation: have these discussions with your partner. Discuss what you want if you find yourself on life support, moving on, etc. Also, no matter what your age, always have a will, because with death, the vultures will begin to circle. Story 38. I would want my husband to do what makes him happy. If he finds someone that he'd like to marry, then he has my blessing. I've told him this. I don't want him to spend his remaining time on earth wallowing in sadness if I pass away before him. On the flip side, I don't think if I'd remarry if he died. What we have is really special and amazing, and I just don't know that I'd be able to make a similar connection with someone else. I guess if I found someone I connected with the same way, then maybe, but I just don't see myself finding, or even wanting to look for another partner. I have enough wonderful friends for companionship in my life. I just don't think I'd even have the desire to date again. Story 39. If he wanted to, I would want him to. As much as I can't imagine life without him, I also can't imagine being alone again, and I wouldn't wish that on him either. Story 40. Yes, I don't want my husband to spend his life alone. The only thing we've agreed on is that we would be buried next to each other, but he is free to remarry if I pass. I just want him to be happy, and he'll be gone so. Story 41. Yes, absolutely. I've loved being married to my husband. Having a partner in life makes life so much better. If I were to pass away, I want him to be happy and married again. I mean, maybe wait 6 months, but then start living life. Story 42. This is a really hard one based off of our life circumstances. We've talked about it before and I don't think he could, but we both have a best friend who, even with no romantic interest and definitely nothing, I could absolutely see him marrying just for the friendship and the ability to still be close with someone. Gotta be best friends with each other to get married, right? And it doesn't always have to be for romance. If you're that close of friends in my eyes, I don't see why not. And especially if there's benefits like easier financials, but that's still secondary to knowing you're forever appreciated just for being around. Story 43. My so and I were at a bar having dinner, watching a couple who was clearly on a date. As I watched her do the hair flopping, the placing the hand on the shoulder, hand under the chin, listening so intently to the other and laughing. I told my so if something were to happen to them, I don't have the energy to put that much effort into dating. No, I wouldn't remarry. I've told my so to remarry and they say they want, but I know they can't be alone. Story 44. I wish my brother would have after his wife died in his arms. He never got over that. After 10 years he accidentally OD'd on prescription meds and alcohol and died. He couldn't move on, left my nephew an orphan at 12, he's now 26, I, on the other hand, would hope he would. But unfortunately, he's dying due to several health issues, and we have had this discussion already. Story 45. I obviously don't like the thought of my wife with someone else, but more than anything I want her to be happy. I also don't like the thought of her being lonely, wallowing in sorrow, and not living her life, so yeah, if she feels like her path to happiness is companionship, I would want that for her. Story 46. My partner and I are inseparable. We have been together since the age of 13 and 15. If he went I'd lickly follow by whatever means. He is my best friend in this life and every life before and after. At least that is what I believe. But if I were to go first, I would not blame him if he didn't follow me. I wouldn't care, cause I'd be dead and I'd be waiting for him in the afterlife. Whatever he did would be you owe to him. Story 47. It's been 4 months since she passed, and I don't see myself ever remarrying. She said she wanted me to not be on my own, but I can't see myself ever being in another relationship. Story 48. Absolutely. Not only would I never want my husband to be lonely, but we are about to have our first child. If I died, I would want them to have a mother. Children do best in a 2-parent household. Story 49. Of course, if they find someone for them, growing old alone sucks, and I'd want them to have someone to take care of them, whether a spouse, kids, extended family, other found family. I would ask that our financial house be in order. It already is, but keeping it updated regularly until my death, so that they and any future kids both be partially protected financially via a marital trust governed by my will. Elder fraud sucks too. Story 50. My husband was a loner before me. I would assume he'd become a loner after me. I have asked my neighbors to not to let him become a hermit if I go first. Story 51. Not married but 10 years counting, and we have a child. That must count for something. It really depends, tbh. To a good woman who takes care of our daughter like it's her own, who truly cares about the little family I left behind. Yes, anything less, no. I'd rather have my daughter growing up with just her father than a play pretend mother who doesn't really care about her and thinks she's a burden. I'd rather have my partner to feel lonely than to have someone that is doing irreversible damage to the relationship he has with his daughter, and then leaves because she can't always get things her way. Story 52. My wife is a very independent woman who can decide on her own. I'd want her to do what she feels is right for her, and I know well she can distinguish a good partner from a bad one. If the next guy or gal is good enough for marriage, why not? Story 53. I wouldn't mind, I mean not right away or too quickly, but he deserves to be happy, and as long as the new girl is respectful of my memory and is amazing towards my kids, but he says he wouldn't, and he says he wouldn't like it if I did. I say the only other male coming into this home would be a big giant dog, which he won't allow us to have as long as he's alive. Story 54. I would want my wife to remarry. Life is too hard to go through it alone. I would hope my wife could find someone to enjoy her years with. I've had a few brushes with death, and I gave some thought to having her promise me that she would go on a few dates before X number of years. I would hate the idea that she would be lonely. Story 55. If she makes him happy, then absolutely. I even told my teenager if I pass away and daddy finds someone he wants to be with, please be respectful. I mean, unless his new woman is in, but I do not foresee my husband choosing to spend the rest of his life with someone who is into his one and only kid that he adores. Story 56. ID want him to be happy. ID hope he wouldn't do it a few months after I died. ID hope he'd give my kids time to grieve and be ready for a new woman in the home. Story 57. We both agreed that if either passed, the other could date and be in relationships but no cohabitation until our daughter is well out of the house. I would honor that, and I believe my husband would as well. Story 58. Not married but will be when we're done with school. Yeah, I do want her to. We're too young for her to not move on. I'm not sure I would though. I'm comfortable and happy in this relationship, and I don't think I do want to really move on. I'll live with my cats and do my own thing. Story 59. If I passed and my wife met someone that made her a little happier and her life easier, I say yes. All I want is for her to be happy anyway. He does stay the away from my sneaker collection. That's for my son, especially the Mags and Dior ones. Story 60. Think it depends a little bit on age. We're in our 40s. I'd absolutely want her to find someone else. If we were in our 80s and she wanted to remarry, I might feel differently. Story 61. I would hope mine would marry again. But it was almost a miracle he ever met me and fell in love in the first place, and I really doubt he will stumble into someone he likes if I die. He's a very reserved person and a major homebody. He would be left with our young child, which I imagine would make that part even worse. Story 62. Of course I would. He'll be dead anyway, so it won't affect me. Besides, I'm a very firm believer in finding whatever bit of happiness you can with the time you have in the world, so if my wife met someone who made her happy, I wouldn't want to deny her that. But honestly, knowing my wife and the kind of person she is, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't even go on one date if I died. Story 63. I wouldn't care what he did as long as he took care of our daughter. If he found someone who loved her as much as me, and if my daughter liked them in return, I would prefer that. Knowing my husband, he dislikes being alone and is easily stressed out, so having someone around to guide him when he needs it, and help him with our daughter, would put my mind at rest. Story 64. As long as the other person makes him happy and she is loving and supportive of our son, I don't have any problems with him remarrying. He says he wouldn't, so I tell him to keep his heart open because he is such a wonderful man. It would be a shame if he wasn't able to experience the emotional intimacy of a healthy relationship again. Plus, I don't expect him to be a priest. Physical connection is important too. I just hope that she would care for his heart. Outwardly, he is a tough man, but inwardly, he is a sweetheart who needs a lot of trust before he will open up. Story 65. I would be okay with him remarrying if he wanted to. I'd almost want him to, but somehow I don't think he'd want to. That's not being vain or boastful. I just think he agrees with me when I say he'll never remarry, since I wouldn't have the energy to break in a new husband my mother's term. I'm 64 and he's almost 60. We were both single for a long time before we found each other in our mid and late 30s, so we both know how to live alone. Story 66. My wife and I have a deal. If one of us dies, then whoever's left should look for a widower. Saves all that awkwardness if there is an afterlife. I've seen so many examples of people being jealous of dead spouses and doing really things to try to get rid of the memories of them. If my wife died, I'd like to be with someone who would understand how I feel and help me preserve her memory. Marriage though, probably not. What's the point? Story 67. Yes, I don't like the idea of her having to go on alone, and we currently have 3 disabled adult offspring. There's no way she could handle that load solo. Story 68. Guess it depends on when I died. If it's like next week, yes, I don't want her miserable and alone for 40 to 60 years. If it's when I'm like 85, I still wouldn't care. She should be happy, but I don't see it as likely. Story 69. No, because no one deserves to be put through the pain he causes. Sadly, he wouldn't last long alone, so I'm sure he would have a new wife soon after I passed. Story 70. I think it depends how old our kids are. I care about my husband being happy and not lonely, and there's no jealousy in it for me. I mean, I'd be dead anyway. I care more about my kids understanding and being happy and comfortable, and not feeling as though their mother is being replaced. I think he'd agree. Story 71. No, we've been married 49 years and I'm a jealous type. He must stay single. He can have as many affairs as he wants, but no one else gets to marry him or it'll haunt him. Story 72. The right answer is yes, but the insecure part of me doesn't want him to fall in love again, to have with her, to tell her he loves her, to maybe start another family with her, to touch her like way he's touched me, to share with someone else the things we built together. Will he still love me? Will he miss me? There's a part of me that wants him to stay single as a testament of his love for me, that he wouldn't want anyone but me, that I was the way to his heart and soul, just like how he is to me. Sigh, but I also want him to be happy, and I guess if that means being with someone else, there's nothing I can do about it. Story 73. To not want them to would be selfish. My wife passed away from cancer nearly 4 years ago at 42. She was very clear that she needed me to fall in love again, to be happy, to let our daughter now 20 see me love, be loved and be happy. Story 74. To me, he may do what his heart wants. If another person took my place in the home before the kids left it, though, I would haunt him mercilessly, and everything that came from my family is for my children only. Story 75. Yes, my wife deserves to love and be loved. I doubt I could move forward with anyone else. She has my whole heart, but I know how sad and lonely she would be, and I wouldn't want her to be in that situation. Story 76 I can't tell him what to do cause I will be dead. I will be jealous if there was an afterlife and I found out about it. For sure, I can't lie about that, but I also have no control over that either. Speaking for myself, I don't care to be involved with anyone after my spouse dies. Plus, I am a lifelong caregiver to a special needs kid, so I will be occupied, I guess. Story 77 If I'm dead, I much prefer the thought of him being with someone rather than being alone. I'm dead, live your life, dude. Miss me, but let me go and live your life in joy, not misery. Just be a good father to our children. FFS, what's the point in griving for a prescribed arbitrary length of time? Then it's 10 years later, he's too old to meet anyone then my kid's life is miserable, their dad is old, cranky and alone. Story 78 Yes, because I think my husband is most content in a relationship and I want him to be happy. I've told him within 2 years he must start dating again. I've made him promise. Story 79 Yes, because I want him to be happy. If someone else can do that when I'm gone, I'm all for it. I've witnessed someone completely crumble under the loneliness after losing their spouse. I wouldn't want that for him. Story 80 Yes, especially if I were to die younger. My husband is an amazing person, and I would honestly be really sad if he didn't get to feel romantic love for the rest of his life. We have kids and have actually talked this out in detail. We both agree that if our kids were still kids, we would wait a minimum of 2 years before considering dating again. If they are adults, then a minimum of 1 year. To be honest, I'd likely not date again if he were to die. I know he would want me to, but I would never find someone like him again. He's the kind of guy that almost 10 years into marriage I'm still singing silly little love songs in the car thinking about him. He says he couldn't date again if I died either, but I honestly hope he would. I've written him a letter if that were to ever happen, and in it I told him to please find love again if he can. Story 81 Of course I would. We don't have kids, so I wouldn't have any concern about a new partner or new kids being prioritized over them. My husband does best when he's loved and has someone in his life. I'd hate to think of him lonely and without cuddles. Obviously, I'd prefer to be the person cuddling him forever, but if I died tomorrow I wouldn't want him to go the rest of his life without romantic love and companionship.